This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 531 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about a 3-2 defeat against Bayern Munich, the upcoming Bundesliga match against 1. FC Köln, and what the heck Dortmund does with the rest of their season now. For all that and more, I'm once again joined by Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, still springtime in Dortmund, so that was nice. Other than that, I'm fine, I guess. How are you?
And that's all we have time for. No, I'm doing all right. Unfortunately, Semi's chemo had to be changed once again because the last protocol unfortunately lost its efficacy. But yeah, the poor dog is hanging in there, and he's doing fairly well, all circumstances considered, still leading a relatively normal dog life, which is very important. So at least on that front, while, things are not going ideal, he's still enjoying some quality of life and so on and so forth. Quality of life, something a Dortmund fan is not enjoying as much these days, as the season practically now feels over after the game against Bayern. I'm very glad that unlike many other podcasts, we don't also have to discuss the Atalanta game now, because we've already done that on the previous episode. But yeah, the Bayern game, I think, gives us enough stuff to discuss. Maybe we'll start from not the beginning of the game, but maybe the lead up. Obviously, there was a bit of a traffic chaos because there was a general strike of the German public transport in Dortmund. It's just citywide, not countrywide. But we had a fan march, obviously, which was very cool to see on the Wittekenstraße. I think everyone's seen the video of just the sheer atmosphere and sort of the hype leading up to this game. And then, of course, the great choreo by the Yellow Wall. I think that really perfectly set the stage for what really is the biggest game of the Bundesliga usually. And of course, then Lars, we had a little bit of lineup talk on the previous pod, but I think none of us had Sabitzer on the team sheet, and also I'm not entirely sure if either of us saw Silva start over Guirassy. Now, obviously, the reasoning for that was also Ramadan and the fact that Guirassy, is obviously not adhering to a professional athlete's diet, but rather to the one that his religion dictates, as far as I understood it. But yeah, maybe we'll start there. Lars, what did you think of Kovac's lineup choices and the approach that he took to this game?
I mean, first of all, I guess we should also mention that a large contingent of Bayern's ultras ended up boycotting the game, basically, because of what they perceived as, I guess we could call it, police brutality. I don't know if that's taking it too far. I've only seen, some videos of, let's say, altercations at the gates. Obviously, police statements and fan group statements are often reading quite contradictory, if that's a word. So I don't actually know exactly what happened. I wasn't there. So I don't want to take sides outside of typically, I'm not usually on the side of police when all is said and done in those sorts of things, but I don't want to speculate as to whether what they did or didn't do was justified or not. So just to mention it, because you talked about the lead up to the game. So I thought you were setting me up for this question, which obviously I would have.
I actually was not, but yeah.
Yeah.
It is still a very important subject to be discussed, because apparently it's something that's also reoccurring, and the criticism certainly is that police are overstepping a lot.
Yeah.
And I think Dortmund fans also had an impromptu banner joining the protest of the Bayern fans.
I mean, they probably had that already in the chamber, as it were, because they might have still been miffed about their treatment at the hands of Italian police. So regardless of that, coming back to the sporting side of things, where we are somewhat more expert in, not necessarily too much, but here we are. I don't think either of us had Sabitzer in the lineup, but that's not necessarily making it a surprise because it's a big game in the season. Bellingham's played quite a bit over the last few weeks, and Sabitzer obviously has more experience. I also think he did really well in this game, so ultimately that choice was justified. And given what you already relayed of Kovac's thoughts on Bensebaini and Guirassy as it pertains to Ramadan, I guess that also makes sense. I mean, I'm sure other Muslim players have played in these games, and if there was more of a gap in terms of how Kovac views these two players in regards to other players, maybe they still would have played.
Emre Can is Muslim, is he not?
I'm not honestly sure whether or not he follows the principles of Ramadan, because I'm also pretty convinced that professional athletes can get like an exemption into Ramadan outside of their sporting endeavors. And but at the end of the day, that's obviously a decision every person has to make for themselves, and that's freedom of religion for you, and that's totally fine. I'm not criticizing anyone for doing this, obviously. And again, if Fabio Silva wasn't a viable option, then Kovac probably wouldn't have done this, but they are, I guess, close enough, and obviously Silva gave them quite a bit off the bench against Atalanta, where Guirassy didn't have a great game, so that might have also played, a factor there. And at the end of the day, I think the lineup wasn't, somewhat of an experiment. It was basically the opposite because of Sabitzer playing the most experienced midfielder they have. Going with both Adeyemi and Bayer to chase those long balls down to put pressure on Bayern's defense, which worked quite a bit for the first 45 minutes, certainly, maybe first 60 or so. I think especially Bayer had a few wins of possession. Unfortunately, both he and Adeyemi also displayed some technical difficulties, losing the ball quite a bit. I also think Silva didn't have a great game, which kind of continues the theme of his playing better when he's coming off the bench against tired legs as opposed to starting, because he doesn't seem to have the same kind of impact. And obviously Dortmund still scored from a set piece without Julian Riasson, through Nico Schlotterbeck, who, I guess, Stefan, reading your comments on X the Everything app, as it is obviously called.
Is it really called the Everything app?
I'm pretty sure that's the marketing setup. But reading your comments, I think you were of the opinion that Schlotterbeck should 100% have been sent off.
Yes. I think at the time, I think I've adjusted this to maybe I'd say 80% or so. But when we talk about Trefferbild, that German word is how the stats met the shin of Stanisic. It did not look great. Also, Schlotterbeck did. I mean, yes, he did play the ball, but it was already an open-sided challenge before his foot hit the leg. And so, to me, this could have easily been a red card, and arguably should have. I think in normal circumstances, it probably is. But at the same time, I personally did appreciate that it wasn't a red card, because that would have decided the game. And we've seen it in many, let's say, high-profile games that referees just tend to be a bit more lenient in such situations. Not always, but sometimes. And Sven Jablonski did it here. And, obviously we were the benefactor of that decision in a big way, because had Schlotterbeck seen the red card in that moment, I think the game would have been over, and so we still lost, but at least we had a fighting chance to not lose this game until the very end of it. I think we all saw the Hoffenheim versus Bayern game where Hoffenheim looked like actually the better team, but then they had a red card, and that sort of just tilted the thing so far into Bayern's favor that they handily won 5-1 in the end. But that's sort of my opinion, that it was a very reckless challenge. There was a lot of momentum on Schlotterbeck's side, and also I thought it was a pretty stupid challenge to go in like that, relatively early in the game. But Lars, I don't recall your take on either Blue Sky or the Everything app, so and coincidentally, that was the only yellow card of the entire game. So it felt like you had to commit almost a red card foul to even see a yellow card. But what are your what's your take on the call from referee Jablonski?
First of all, it's brave of you to assume that all of us remember the Bayern Hoffenheim game, because I don't watch Bayern Hoffenheim games ever. Like, maybe I would if it was a cup final, but I'm not even sure then. I did pull out my percentages on Blue Sky, which I suppose is the nothing app, if X is the everything app, because nobody seems to be on Blue Sky. I was giving it 65-35 in favor, as it were, of a red card. So I was leaning towards a red card, but to me it was always one of them where the decision on the field was going to stand, because you can make a case for either a yellow card because Schlotterbeck did play the ball first and his foot kind of ricocheted off the ball towards Stanisic, who I think kind of made a meal of things, because maybe there was initial pain and shock, but like he was totally fine afterwards. It's
I don't know, you saw his luck after the game, right?
I don't care. He played until the 90th minute, I think, unless he was substituted off, but he wasn't substituted off because of this foul. He didn't have any issues. He won a penalty later on, so I think he kind of exaggerated his, or maybe unintentionally, obviously, but I think the reaction was a bit over the top.
I don't know, I'll be honest.
Yeah, but you already
It's always nice to sit here, but this shit actually really fucking hurts. So I don't know if I want to accuse anyone of exaggeration in this particular case. I'm sure it still hurt like a lot, and especially in the like shin and foot region. I feel like the pain curve goes up very steeply. If you stub your toe, it really hurts for the first 10 seconds, like you've been stepped in the eye, but then relatively quickly the pain abates also. It's something that's obviously just my personal observation.
Your personal observation from being stabbed in the eye, Stefan?
Yes, exactly. No, but I think you get my point. I tend to not. I try to not blame soccer players for exaggeration. Jesus Christ, I cannot pronounce that word today. Making more out of the situation. When they get stamped on the foot or so, or on a toe, because it just hurts initially a lot.
Which is why I said he might have done it unintentionally, Stefan, because the initial shock of the pain might have been quite a bit, but he rolled around on the floor and his teammates looking at him with heads in hands, and you were thinking maybe he's broken his leg or something, and he was totally fine playing on. So that's what I meant. But yes, as I said, I was leaning towards the red card, so it's not like we have to agree to disagree or anything, because obviously
my reactions were very live. I think I tweeted that, X'd, what is it called? Excremented? Before I even saw the replay, really, that Schlotterbeck should see red. That was my initial live reaction, so whatever. Just continue. I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
I mean, I don't know how much more there is to add. Like, obviously, he was lucky because at the very least, it's a 50-50 decision. And as I said, if Jablonski had given a red card, there's no way VAR would have intervened and said, but yeah, he gets the ball first. But then you could also say the intensity is too high and it's reckless because he's, putting his opponent in a dangerous situation. So he was lucky. There's no two ways about it. But I kind of think, as you already said, that the referee doesn't want to more or less decide the game when it's one of those high-profile matches, or whether that's a knockout tie or, the standout fixture in the Bundesliga season. So it makes sense that maybe the percentages get shifted a little bit because of that. And at the end of the day, I guess Stanisic was much more fine than Emre Can after a somewhat, nonsensical small foul by Konrad Laimer. I don't even know if Can picked up his ACL injury in that situation or as, a consequence, because he definitely had some issues with his lower leg after that foul by Laimer. And then I think after the third treatment on the pitch or pitch side, Can's ACL was basically done for and his season is over. And according to Stefan Butzko on XD Everything app, he might not get a new contract, which I disagree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think if we say percentages, I think you said 0% that whatever my take was is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you read all the reports around this matter, it seems evident that Dortmund will basically give him a contract to hopefully reduced wages, because if they pay Emre Can the same amount of money, basically to get right and to be health insured and all that, because I think that makes sense. Also, I don't know exactly how it works, but I think the employer usually recoups the money, and I think to a certain extent Dortmund would too, if someone has a Krankenschein. So from a insurance side of things, I think it would not actually be that costly for Dortmund. Obviously, they will not recoup 100% of the money, but say they pay him 2 or 3 million for the next contract instead of, I don't know what his current wage is, but I think it's above 8-9 million or so in that region, since he is one of Dortmund's top earners. But yeah, first of all, I think we all just need to say get well soon. A horrible thing to see happening. I thought it was very nice of the fans in the stadium to chant his name. And I think the first injury was not really, was that even the Laimer foul? I thought that was sort of more of a non-contact thing where he just
after the
stepped
foul
on
by
the ball.
No. I think the first real injury came after Laimer somewhat lazily, when the ball was going out, gave him a bit of a push, and that kind of got Can off balance, I think, and maybe he hyperextended his knee there already, or maybe he, had some problems with his ankle or whatever, and then later on, with a lack of stability in his leg, did his ACL. But regardless, I think I was pretty convinced that Emre Can was going to get a contract anyway, because they like him at centre half. I have no problem with him at centre back because he's a good centre back. He's also, regardless of what people say, a very good captain, very well respected by his teammates, which you could also see when he went off at half time. And I would agree that he's going to be on reduced wages. He was going to be on reduced wages anyway, because he's now a 32-year-old, I think, centre back, as opposed to when did he sign his first contract, 27, 28-year-old central midfielder. Like, that makes a difference, obviously. And now it's only right that he's getting a contract extension, because you can't abandon your captain on, a torn ACL and let his contract expire and say, see ya, tough luck. Because obviously, given the timeline, he tore his ACL on March the 1st, so you would assume he's not going to be back before the end of September. and probably not fully ready to play, Englische Wochen, let's say, until October. So obviously he would find it very hard to find another club where he could play a decent sized role and get a contract consummate to what he's been over his career. Like the ACL definitely makes it even more of a foregone conclusion that he's going to get a new contract. And I mean, a lot of Dortmund fans kind of have it in for Emre Can. Like when Rami Bensebaini makes 4 mistakes against Atalanta, there's still people talking about Emre Can for some reason after that game. So I'm guessing a lot of people will not like it. I think I've seen a lot of people make comparisons to Marco Reus and Mats Hummels, which don't really apply in my opinion. So from my side, I hope Emre Can gets over this, because obviously being towards the end of your career, a devastating knee injury can have much more of an impact than, for a 20-year-old who has his entire playing career basically in front of him.
Yeah, I was honestly wondering if Emre Can would just retire from after this, because there's obviously a question mark, not just with the ACL, but in general, his fitness, because of the muscular problems he was nursing throughout the entire season, and really also last season, where you have to wonder at some point whether he can actually get to a fitness level again to play consistently on that level. So certainly, I think you just referenced my tweet again, because I was talking about the contract extension, or whether his contract should be extended. And I don't know if it's a business, obviously, and I don't know if you need to spend 2-3 million on a player for the sake of pity. I think it's something to consider, to just end things, even if they end on a bad note, to be honest. But I can totally understand to go the other direction, which obviously from a human standpoint is the much nicer one. Let's put it this way. But I don't know what Emre Can can still really provide, as in on the field. I think off the pitch, in the locker room, he's been invaluable. Nico Schlotterbeck talked a lot during his recovery from his meniscus tear, that when he was basically together in rehab with Emre Can, that Emre Can for him was also a really big help, because being in rehab, especially on a long-term injury for a player, is really, really difficult, because it's a lot of work, and basically you're kept from what really fulfills you. There was I think it was Kevin Pinnow on the Ruhrnachrichten podcast talked about how, but I'm not entirely sure, but I had to go to New York yesterday, so I listened to a billion podcasts on the train, so I might confuse stuff because I also was very sleep deprived, but basically talking about how after the game, when he was limping off in crutches, he was just sitting in his car for like a good half hour or so to decompress and basically deal with that situation, because mentally it is really tough, especially Emre Can had to go through a lot of rehab recently. So I just wish him a lot of strength to get through this, because I'm sure it is not easy. And I don't know if he had surgery yet, but that's certainly also something that's probably on the cards. And we just talked about the initial moment. He was subbed off right before halftime, but it is really, obviously we don't know yet exactly what was damaged in his knee, but it also does speak for him that the initial injury, I already thought that was at least a season-ending injury, and then he came back from it and played another 30 or so minutes. I have a lot of respect for that fight, and he didn't really play poorly in that part either. And it's obviously a big game where if you're injured, it's it's hard to fathom to play there. Lars, I don't know what your take is on this, but it certainly, to me, proves again that he is willing to go above and beyond for the black and yellow colors.
I guess it's not quite as legendary as Otto Addo scoring a goal in the Champions League on a torn ACL, because obviously I think Otto Addo was basically a situation where he tore his ACL, scored the goal, and then was subbed off, like in a fairly short amount of time, if memory serves. I mean, obviously, it's, I guess, more than 20 years ago now. It's not going to live in that sort of infamy, because, like, he's a center half and he didn't score or whatever. But I've always had, not necessarily always, because I think Emre Can has kind of grown on me over the years. I think there are a number of episodes of this show where all of us were kind of shitting on him. But he's definitely grown on me, especially also in the first half of this season when I was covering the team more closely. You can tell that he's a stand-up guy. You can tell how much respect he commands from both the higher-ups in the club and his teammates. So I'm not surprised that he would put his body on the line, as it were, for the team. That's why he's the captain. And yeah, I just hope that this isn't the end of what is actually a pretty great career if you look at it. Like, he played for a number of great clubs in the world. Played
and also Bayern
and Leverkusen. And Juventus, I have to say, as an Inter fan. So obviously he played for Liverpool and Dortmund, most importantly. I just hope that he can come back and still contribute next season. And I would just object perhaps to the terminology that you used. It's not out of pity that he's going to get a contract. It's the done thing. And as I said before, he was going to get a new contract anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I too, I'm pretty sure if you put a gun to my head of players on the current roster that will get a new contract, I think Can and Brandt are the names I would say. Like, I'm not entirely sure about Schlotterbeck. I think, does Adeyemi also need a new contract?
Yeah, 27, like Schlotterbeck, I think, because they were signed in the same window, weren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. Süle, I think we both agree on that. His stint in Dortmund is likely over. But we can discuss this in a minute. Let's go back to the game. What impressed me the most with the entire first half is that outside of two more or less harmless shots from Kimmich, I don't really call that many big chances for Bayern. Meanwhile, I thought Dortmund in the first half were really good at doing what you need to do to beat Bayern. Obviously, they scored a goal of that set piece, and really nice curler from Daniel Svensson, who managed to find Schlotterbeck, I think, in between Kane and Tah, which are two very good defenders in that regard. So for Schlotterbeck to get this open, was a really nice corner, and very vexing that Dortmund felt like took half the corner kicks they had in weird short fashion that then either resulted in counterattacks for Bayern or just nothing. So there's that, but also just the destruction of Bayern throughout the entire game. And I think in that regard, I really did appreciate that Silva was starting instead of Guirassy, because Guirassy is not as active in that regard. He is not such a good pressing player, and this game really did highlight the off-ball strength of a Maxi Bayer also, because I thought he was excellent in closing all these gaps, even if I called him the cardio man. But that's more to do with the on-ball stuff. But yeah, I think in that regard, and you already mentioned Sabitzer, I think I need to shout out young Kot too, because with Rierson suspended, he was plugged in there, and I thought he played a really good game. Maybe graded on the curve a little bit, but I thought that Dortmund's overall pressing against Bayern, while it was maybe not as effective in gripping than it was like under Jürgen Klopp back in the day, but I still thought they managed to be effective enough to keep Bayern at bay and to soak pressure and not have this game look like handball, basically, where Bayern just circle around the Dortmund's penalty area and have one wave after pressure. So that was, to me, was very positive. Second half we can obviously discuss, but Lars, maybe your observations from the first half and what Dortmund did well or maybe did not well or could have done better.
I think defensively it was almost a perfect game considering the opponent and occasion and all that. Like as you said, they didn't really allow Bayern any openings. I thought they played it quite smart in terms of, build up, not going too risky. Because of Adeyemi and Bayer, you can send long balls down the field and have them chase them. And obviously when you are playing against Bayern, you don't have the onus of possession. You can sit back a bit and, be in defensive shape where with your attacking players maybe applying pressure on Bayern's build-up, and all of that worked pretty well. Obviously the goal came from a set piece, and if we are being frank, a set piece was the only way a goal was going to be scored in the first half, because obviously Bayern are also very well organized outside of set pieces. Like they don't really give you much because of just the quality of players and also the level of organization. So yeah, at the end of the day, it was somewhat of a cagey first half, I would say, like nobody wanting to make the one mistake that could change the game. I would suppose that, the Can substitution kind of made a bit of a difference as a potential second half, because, Rami Bensebaini
thought it made a huge difference.
Rami Bensebaini playing as the right-sided centre-back because they wanted to keep Schlotterbeck on the left for his ball-playing ability, because he has better passing angles than from the centre of the back three. I don't think Bensebaini had a bad game personally or individually, but I think they really like Can's pace and aggressiveness defensively, and Bensebaini is not, the same kind of center half. He's not even a center half. He's a left back playing somewhat out of position. You could obviously say the same about Emre Can as a central midfielder, but he's done it for a longer time. But I honestly don't think the second half was so much about Dortmund getting worse, but just Bayern, turning the screw a little bit. It's very hard to keep, Olise, Musiala, Diaz, Kane, out of a game for 90 minutes. And obviously they didn't manage to do that. The goals they conceded, a bit annoying. Like the first one, okay, that's just Bayern's quality. They got behind you one time. It kind of happens. The penalty, just a bit of lazy defending, I would say, from Schlotterbeck. Like that's not necessarily a situation where you have to let your leg dangle, because at the end it's still only Stanisic. Like if there's one Bayern outfield player you want to have the ball in that situation, it's probably Stanisic, because he's the least individually gifted, let's say. And the third goal, a great finish from Kimmich, it has to be said, but obviously a bit annoying that Joe Bellingham's clearance only went as far as Kimmich, and considering also what happened in the first leg, I'm pretty sure
he did a better job there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Joe Bellingham is quite happy that Dortmund and Bayern are only playing twice a year, because he's now had unfortunate incidents. Let's say, I wouldn't necessarily call them mistakes, but been involved in unfortunate game-defining moments twice now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't even know if the first goal that Bayern scored, if that's because of Bensebaini or because of Koto, but obviously if Gnabry makes this run and nobody picks him up, and is that wide open. To me, obviously, there's a lack of communication. Obviously, the pass by Kimmich is world class, and it's a really impressive dink. I wish we would see these kind of passes more often from Dortmund playmakers. But still, maybe Emre Can would have defended that, maybe not. I have no idea. But either way, very annoying to get broken down like that. I don't know if you want to make the case for putting more pressure on Kimmich, but I think in that situation there wasn't really much that Dortmund could have done. I feel like in the build-up to that goal, the ball was also once again bouncing around before Kimmich basically played this lob. And I mean, the third goal that Bayern scored was also similar, where I felt like they already cleared the situation. I think it was Anton's clear, so to Kimmich, where they just cut out a pass from Stanisic, and in the second, I forgot what exactly happened. In the third goal. But yeah, that's also just very annoying, as you said, because it felt like Dortmund could have won this game if things went a little bit more in their favor. It certainly wasn't a match where Bayern were just playing us off the park and were always going to win. It did not feel like a foregone conclusion. The second goal, I think that's just something where, as you said, that Schlotterbeck needs to do better. It is a bit of a shame. Emre Can had a horrible game against Atlanta, I thought, overall, just because he was coming back from injury and out of rhythm. And I think the same thing you can say for Schlotterbeck. It is a little bit annoying in general to me that this is a circumstance we have to deal with in the season-defining part of the season. In the defining part of the season, I don't know why I added another season there. But basically, our defensive lineup isn't where it needs to be. It's not in ideal condition, and we have to deal with our striker fasting and all these kind of situations. Chukwuemeka is unavailable. I think this news broke just as I woke up on Saturday. So all these little circumstances that aren't exactly helping us. I wish, that Dortmund would be able to really have a fully healthy squad and be in form to take on Bayern once, because to me it feels like, and that's obviously biased, but that it just, for whatever reason, never quite happens. Bayern obviously themselves had a lot of key injuries. I mean, Manuel Neuer wasn't available for this game. Alphonso Davies is out again, and a couple other names you can name there. But it's still annoying to me overall. But yeah, Nico Schlotterbeck, I think we've discussed this often enough here. While we all want him to extend his contract and to become a pillar of Dortmund, I think just as a core, or just like if you narrow it down to his decision making in defense and just one-on-one defending, I think there is still a lot of room for improvement, and that is certainly an aspect of his game that is not top class. I would go as far as saying that as a pure defender, Waldemar Anton right now, I think, is our best defender in the squads. What's your view on that? That's just sort of my take right now.
I mean, I don't think that's like even a lukewarm take, because when people talk about Schlotterbeck, they are talking about his left foot and his build-up and his creativity, let's say, and his passing range, but nobody's talking necessarily about his one-on-one defending. Obviously, he has that tendency to, make the spectacular sliding tackles and blocks and celebrates them, and that's what sometimes people keep in mind also. But I think from a pure defensive instincts, positioning, and all that sort of thing, I think Waldemar Anton is definitely better than him in that regard. And I think also, just generally speaking, if we were grading, players based on their performances so far this season, I would say that Waldemar Anton is having a better season than Nico Schlotterbeck, which also isn't, too outrageous a thing to say, because we have to remember that Schlotterbeck missed 6 or 5.5 months with his torn meniscus, and like Waldemar Anton is also no slouch. Like, he could easily start for Germany as well as Schlotterbeck. I'm pretty sure he won't, because there's Jonathan Tah and Antonio Rüdiger, but I don't think Julian Nagelsmann would have too many issues with Waldemar Anton starting at the World Cup, because he's a very good center half. He's developed very well over the years. I think when he left Stuttgart for Dortmund, there was a lot of interest on the market for him, and he's basically shown, not from the first day at Dortmund, because he definitely needed a few months to get going, but basically ever since Niko Kovac has taken over, I think Waldemar Anton has basically been a rock defensively. I think he sometimes makes mistakes on the ball. He's not as good, obviously, in build-up as Schlotterbeck, but he also kind of gets careless in possession a couple of times every other game. So there's obviously also room for improvement. But I think I read somewhere this week that if Emre Can isn't the captain next season because of maybe his ACL, or because, his somewhat diminished role, then Waldemar Anton is the candidate next to Schlotterbeck, whose future obviously is still up in the air. And I could see Waldemar Anton being Dortmund's captain, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think, and that's something I've wondered about a lot recently, do you think because of these mistakes we regularly see from Nico Schlotterbeck that maybe top teams like, for example, Bayern Munich or the Real Madrids of the world or whatnot are a little bit more hesitant on splurging for him and, him actually making that move? Because I do feel like, at least as of right now, he is not on that top level that you need to have to be a center back for these clubs. Do you think that is something that could help Dortmund secure him on a longer term deal? I
mean, Real Madrid spent, I guess, somewhere close to 60 million on Dean Huijsen of Bournemouth before this season, or before the Club World Cup, I think. I don't think he's at the top level just because of age, experience and all that. Like, there's always a bit of projection with this stuff.
Exactly.
I think he would have gone to Bayern if they hadn't been able to tie Upamecano down to a new contract, because pairing Schlotterbeck and Tah would have made all the sense in the world, with Min Jae Kim being like the very strong third option for Bayern. But obviously they got Jonathan Tah on a free transfer before this season. If that hadn't happened, who knows? But you can only devote so many resources into your central defense. And it's probably to Dortmund's benefit, because right now all the signs are pointing to it being basically a 2-horse race between Real Madrid and Dortmund. And I don't really get the sense that a bid from Real Madrid is coming. And I think, as we talked about maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, the most likely outcome right now seems to be a contract extension with a release clause, which obviously isn't ideal, but if that ensures you at least one more season of Schlotterbeck and a somewhat substantial transfer fee, then I guess it's better than the alternative of losing him, especially now that they would have to rebuild the entire or almost the entire defensive line, because they can't obviously consider Emre Can in that picture. Niklas Süle is leaving, so you would be left only with Anton as a mainstay, and then Bensebaini playing somewhat out of position. And I don't know if Kau Prates is going to end up factoring into the centre back discussion. So it's imperative, even more so now, that they get something done with Schlotterbeck. But it also seems as though a decision is not coming before the end of this month. So there's still a few more weeks of speculation to come. There's an international break in March, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe yes, things get a little bit more heated up in that time, because obviously that's usually the kind of time where a lot of transfer talk starts picking up steam.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, and maybe I'm jumping the shark here a little bit, but I would think that Dortmund are still or are already planning with the Champions League qualification. Maybe that would be wrong to do. Maybe now they shit the bed in so far that they don't finish inside the top 4. But that to me would be a massive surprise, honestly. But things can happen, of course. But in general, I think if Nico Schlotterbeck signs a new deal, then Dortmund will have at least most parameters set for next season. At least that's sort of my belief, and then can sort of really start planning around that and build around that core, I guess, that they have. We can discuss in a second what else is there, but what we haven't discussed yet, and you just mentioned Upamecano. If we talk about poor defensive instincts, I don't want to neglect the double commit that he had together with Tah, both marking Girassi when Sabitzer played in that cross in the 83rd minute. And what a well-taken shot from Daniel Svensson it was, only upstaged by the sideways somersault that he had. But yeah, certainly the highlight from a Dortmund perspective in this game, this goal, because it was just a nice goal from open play, first time hit from your left back that obviously is left-footed, to hit the corner of the goal like this. Just a pretty sweet goal. And at least I personally had the belief for the last 10 minutes or so, obviously cut short a little later by that Kimmich goal, but that Dortmund couldn't actually win this game. What were your thoughts as a result of this goal? Because Dortmund had a nice response after Bayern took the lead, I thought, and really put some pressure on Bayern as well.
If I had any, I don't remember having many thoughts. So let's just move on.
All right, fine. So yeah, at least to me, that's a positive that Dortmund really did show a great fight. And yeah, unfortunate ending to the game. Unfortunate to lose this game. And now obviously we do have the question in front of us, what do we do with the rest of the season, because there's no Champions League anymore. Dortmund are no longer in the cup, and the answer is relatively obvious, is now you try to secure Champions League qualification as quickly as possible and coast to a second place finish. But Lars, that is obviously only the most logical conclusion, but underneath there's a coach that needs to keep the squad happy and all that, and obviously you have players that usually have the ambition to play in the Champions League beyond the initial phase. I'll include the playoff round in that, and so on and so forth. And obviously now having the absolute guarantee that you're no longer in the title race is probably also not a great motivator. So, what do you think, or how do you think this season now will peter out, as they say?
I mean, will it? I think peter out is connotated. Is that a word? I don't know. It is in yes. German anyway, or the German version. In like negative terms.
Auspetern gibt's. Ist denn Auspetern in German?
Auslaufen? Austrudeln. Yeah, austrudeln. I mean, I think there's a negative connotation, to make it easier, with peter out. I think there is still a little bit to play for. I think there's a certain pride in being best after Bayern, who are just unassailable this season, as once again established on Saturday. Dortmund have a 6-point cushion to Hoffenheim and Stuttgart, 8 points to Leipzig in 5th. Yeah. So obviously Dortmund also play everyone behind them, basically. So, it's not absolutely guaranteed just yet that they are going to finish second. So it's not like they can now, experiment and start playing Inacio Albert double tens or whatever. So there's
that was actually going to be my next question.
It's still going to be important to rack up results. There's also just, the intrinsic motivation of these athletes. Like, I always find it hard to believe that, there's now going to be this massive depression and nobody's going to have anything to play for. Like, at the end of the day, when 22 players are on the pitch and the referee blows his whistle, every one of them wants to win the game, regardless of whether that leads to anything at the end of the year or not. So I don't really buy into the theories of, they have nothing to play for, and now that's going to be, less professional outlooks or whatever. So I think starting from the game in Cologne, there's also kind of at least somewhat of a responsibility to the rest of the league to take every game seriously, because obviously there's things like the relegation fight in which Cologne fights themselves and a few of the other teams Dortmund are facing, even though most of the opposition going towards the end of the year is playing rather for Europe than against relegation. And obviously if, results go their way enough that, second place seems in the bag early enough, then I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of experimentation with the likes of Inacio, who made his debut against Bayern, with Rejani, who's obviously now with Emre Can's injury one step closer to being needed again. Matisse Albert might also get his debut. Musa Kawa returned for the under-23s against Oberhausen on, I think, Sunday. So I'm pretty sure if there are opportunities for those guys to get some minutes, then they will be taken. But again, it's there's still a bit to play for, even if they won't be handed a trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think, a bit of a shift more to handing opportunities to younger players, I think, should be visible from here on out. But as you said, I think qualifying for the Champions League as soon as possible will definitely help that case. And I hope what we'll see for the rest of the season is a very successful winning streak. Because I think this is sort of what Dortmund managed to do after a lack of international football last season. And I'm not saying they need to win 7 out of 8 or now I think what's 10 games left or so, 9 out of 10 or so. But it still would be nice to have a very good result streak and build some momentum for the next season. And I'm really intrigued what Sebastian Kehl, Ricken, etc. are already doing in terms of planning for the next season, because there are a lot of variables. Felix Metscher right now is being linked to with a move to Manchester City. He is obviously our playmaker, our number 8. Girassi might also want to leave. There's a question mark behind Adeyemi. We still don't know what the Schlotterbeck situation is going to be. So, and we haven't really mentioned him, but I also don't know if Sabitzer wants to play in this role for Dortmund going forward, or if he is going to ask for a move somewhere else. So I feel like there are just a lot of moving parts. That's obviously more for the summer transfer, but still, it is important for Kovac if he already has sort of a better picture of how next season's team is going to look like to build toward that as well, as much as he can. Obviously, the likes of Justin Lerma and Karl Pratsch are not here yet, but this is sort of just my anticipation. I think that Bellingham and Metscher will probably start unless there are injuries or suspension every game from here on out till the rest of the season. So that's my prediction. I also don't know what Julian Brandt and Chukwuemeka are going to do. That is maybe one little wrinkle. I think that Chukwuemeka is probably a better number 8 than 10. So maybe that's something we will see going forward if Dortmund sell Mecha, where they say, okay, we'll bet on Chukwuemeka a little bit more. I'm not saying that they're just going to take Mecha out of the lineup because he's far too important for that, but to split those minutes, I also thought the Mecha Chukwuemeka pairing that we saw late in Atalanta was working relatively well. So maybe that's also something to take a look at. But yeah, other than that, I think it's time to look at transfer rumors a little bit more and hope that I don't know if you want to call it rebuild or reshuffle or realignment for next season. Obviously now with a lack of 11 to 20 million euros due to the failure to get to the round of 16, will influence that probably in a negative way, but still, Dortmund might just have to be a little bit more creative. But I think overall the focus shifts a little bit to next season. But again, we should not put all eggs in the Champions League qualification basket either, because shit can go wrong quickly too. But at least this team under Kovac has shown that they know how to pick up results. But as you said, they do play against the better teams predominantly. They still have to play Hoffenheim, Leverkusen, Stuttgart, etc. So let's hope that things don't go awry, because 8 points are also something that you can cough up if you're not careful. But in the meantime, Lars, I think that pretty much covers the Bayern game. And I don't know if there's much you want to preview about the Cologne game. I think Cologne are struggling sides that Dortmund need to take care of, honestly. And we'll see after the news conference tomorrow, I think it is, who is going to be available. So, Lars, if you have any other overall thoughts on this game against Bayern or Dortmund season, be my guest. But if not, we can also just knock it on the head here.
I think the only it's kind of a public service announcement, I guess, but the main connecting road between Dortmund and Cologne is closed the entire weekend, so a lot of fans will probably have to go by train, which I guess makes the most sense anyway. But if anyone hadn't heard so far, the A1 Autobahn is closed for roadworks, both directions, I think, from Friday evening to Monday in the early hours. So better take the train, because obviously all other roads will be full as hell. Other than that, I think Cologne are better than you would think a team that is now hovering, I think, 2 points ahead of the relegation playoff spot usually is, because they don't really get blown out. They are usually fairly well organized defensively. They just struggle with consistency going forward, not least because Said El-Mala, their young star, has had a few tougher months. I think he's kind of hit maybe the rookie wall, if that were a thing in, the Bundesliga. But it's not like Dortmund can just take this game easily, because if we remember the first meeting, it took until the 97th minute and 97th corner of the game for Maxi Bayer to kind of bungle in the winner. Obviously, that was well deserved, but I remember sitting in the stadium and thinking they could play 3 hours and they won't score. And obviously it would be a bummer to not have somewhat of a response after the games against Atalanta and Bayern. And I guess you kind of mentioned it already in terms of last season when they went on a good run. They also did that this season, because we have to remember that between the two Bayern games, those are the only losses Dortmund have suffered in the Bundesliga. So I think it's fair to expect a response of some kind in Cologne on Saturday evening.
Yeah, we'll see. It just comes back to me that said Said and Mala also wasted a massive chance to take the lead in the first leg. Certainly, I would hope that Dortmund right now managed to not get counterattacked to shreds. I think the whole debate in Cologne right now is that he's not a starting player, but rather coming off the bench. Maybe he'll start against Dortmund A, to calm these discussions, and B, I think it would make sense to have a player of his profile start against Dortmund, considering that his pace can really exploit Dortmund's backline, as it is not uncommon that fast, speedy opposition players, and especially wingers, have managed their way behind Dortmund's backline this season. If there's one glaring weakness of this Dortmund team, is that they allow these one-on-one situations with Kobel, but honestly, I think for the most part, it has worked out rather well for Kobel and Dortmund to allow these situations, because be it Wolfsburg or other teams, a lot of these one-on-ones were actually missed. Anyway, thank you, Lars. I like that we start the show with the weather report and end it with the traffic report. And yeah, everyone out there, thank you as always for listening, and we'll be back next week after the Cologne game. Until then, enjoy your time and goodbye.